Welcome to today's PAWSCAST.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Don Swager. Welcome to the FSU PAWSCAST. So glad that you've decided to join us. I'm super excited to be here today and be your host. Dr. Mandy is on vacation, getting some much needed rest, and we wish her well. Well, I'm super excited to have this young man back in our studio. If you listened to part one on technology addiction, then I'm sure that you learned so many different things. He's agreed to come back and be with us for part two. So Brad, thanks for coming back.
It's a privilege, Don. I'm honored to call you friend, and I will serve you anytime you ask.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. If you're listening for the first time, let me give a brief bio about this wonderful person that we have in our studio today. Brad Huddleston is a well-known, internationally respected author, teacher, consultant. He works with high school students, college students, law enforcement officers. He works with churches and youth groups. He's a world's traveler, spends a lot of time in Australia and South Africa and some other continents as well. But I've grown to love him, and I have to tell you, brother, the brief story about this book and how I came across it. Again, if you've heard this before, sorry, I'm going to repeat myself, but I was in a meeting, a colleague was reading, the only thing I could see was cocaine. I said, brother, what are you doing? You're reading about cocaine, what's going on? He said, no, it's digital cocaine. And he introduced me to the book. I bought it, loved it, couldn't put it down, gave you a call. So glad that you accepted the invite, drove up with your beautiful wife, Beth, and you're here today talking about a very, very important subject with technology addiction. So, brother, welcome to Frostburg State University, and thanks for joining us for part two.
Yeah, it's a privilege, and one of the reasons I wanted to come is to support you. You're on the front lines as well, so I view us as linking arms. Anything I can do to help.
Well, we certainly appreciate that. We care about our students, and we have students from all over the country and even different parts of the world with our International Students Program. And I think that they get a good education at Frostburg State University, and I think that our PAWSCAST only enhance the quality of our educational programs. So again, thanks for being here.
It's a privilege.
So we covered chapter 1 in our first episode, part 1, and we talked about multitasking, we talked about dopamine, we got lessons in neuroscience, well over my head, but you broke it down nicely. I hope that it draws some interest and we can get you back to Western Maryland real soon. But nonetheless, we're going to dive into chapter 2, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
So I'd like to say that I'm so glad that you addressed the boredom issue. It's a big issue. It doesn't matter if it's students from Frostburg, Seattle, Washington, Florida, they all say the same thing. I mean, they could live in rural America or the metro, the large cities, and they're saying, I'm bored.
Yeah. There's
nothing to do. So you mentioned a concept called numbing effect. I think our audience would be really intrigued about learning more about the pleasure center of the brain and the numbing effect, and why students are just, and not only students, but other people saying they're bored.
Right.
Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. For those who deal with addiction regularly, they will certainly know the term anhedonia, or when people become anhedonic. But before we go there, let's talk about boredom in and of itself. Boredom is actually the gateway to creativity. So boredom's needed. The artificially created boredom is what is bad, and that's what we're talking about here. So the good side of boredom is, in the old days, you would put a child out in the backyard with a sandbox or dirt, and that's about it. And they would be bored, but the brain would kick in and start growing neurons in an effort to try to overcome that boredom, so they would become what we call creative. And those are neural pathways. And you'll discover what that child is good at, what they're gifted at, because they'll create, and in my case, I got in trouble, I was so creative. But they will create little toys out of sticks, and they'll build sandcastles in the sandbox, and they'll climb trees, and they'll throw rocks at their neighbors, and some things they shouldn't do. but that's creativity. Yeah. It turns out when you put a screen in front of that child, that mechanism never kicks in, the normal boredom. So now they're overstimulated because of the dopamine, and they love it. So in the early days, you would hear teachers and psychologists say you should use this app on an iPad because they will become engaged. Look how they focus. Well, as it turns out, they're being chemically mesmerized through dopamine, and it's not always cognition. In fact, it rarely is. So that process of normal boredom has been interrupted, and then when the artificial boredom sets in, it sets in this way. They're being stimulated, and they'll play video games, and they'll be hyper, very hyper. But because the device at that stage has become a drug, literally because of the same amounts of dopamine as cocaine, hence the name of the book, the brain starts to build up tolerance, a resistance to the drug, trying to defend itself, and it's pushing out the excess dopamine, trying to get us to stop. But there's no social stigma with screens like there would be a traditional drug, so we don't stop. We just keep playing, or we keep scrolling, we keep doing that. So we penetrate this resistance, and we get our fix. But the catch-22 is the tolerance just gets stronger. And that tolerance is blocking out the normal flow of dopamine that makes us feel the sensation of joy and pleasure. So now the joy and the pleasure is dampened. Stimulation, in other words, is decreasing. And what is the absence of stimulation? Boredom. So now we have children in epidemic numbers saying, I'm bored, and their parents and grandparents are saying, how in the world could you be bored? You have more stuff than we ever had growing up.
Yeah.
And it's because it's been artificially created boredom, and the medical condition is called anhedonia. It's two Greek words put together, an, meaning none, and hedonia, which is where we get our English word hedonism, which is the ongoing constant pursuit of pleasure, which is what drugs and our screens allow us to do, just as much as you want. You put the "and" in front of it, you start to block out the pleasure, and in this case, it's a metaphor. Well, not a metaphor, it's literally the tolerance and the resistance being built up to that drug, forcing us to have to do more and more. But the decrease of the feeling of pleasure and joy being artificially suppressed is causing us to be artificially bored, and it's also very dangerous. I hope I explained that okay.
Therefore, numb.
Very numb. So, yeah, boredom is your emotions are numbed.
Yeah.
You can't feel anymore.
Yeah.
So what you end up having is a situation where people lose empathy. So there have been studies. There was one, I think it was in Boston. This is why I'm hesitant to talk about numbers, but this percentage was very high of a group of male students that they asked at a university somewhere in the Northeast, if you could get away with raping someone, would you rape them? And the amount of young men that said they would was astronomically high, and it was jolting. Wow. Now, my theory behind that is that what we do know, there is a huge lack of empathy, and there's a correlation with digital addiction. It's because they have numbed themselves where they don't have normal feelings toward other people. They can't empathize, they can't sympathize with people. So that is a numbing of the pleasure center, and the medical condition is known as anhedonia. They have become anhedonic.
Well, that was my next question. So you already answered that question. You know, I was reminded when you were talking, there was a commercial a while back, and I think it was around the Super Bowl time. And for those that don't love football, they watch the Super Bowl because of the commercials a lot of times. Yeah. You know, but I remember that, and I don't even know what they were advertising. But we
rarely do.
Right.
We're after the punchline.
There was a young man, and he's out in the yard with his father. His father takes his video games from him. And he says, no, I want you to clean up the yard. And he's like, no, give me back my video games, you know. Yeah. And this teenager, an older teenager, is throwing a fit.
Yeah.
You know, so I would assume then that's an example of some of the withdrawal.
It is.
A young person would feel, or anybody would feel, you know, when their form of quote unquote drug of choice is removed from them. But I found it interesting that, you know, here's this commercial. Again, I don't know what they were advertising, but here's this commercial. It's almost like this subconscious cry for help. Like this is an issue. You know, obviously they want to sell a product, but
it's also an issue that millions, multiply millions, can relate to.
Yeah.
That's why they used it, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I'll just give you two quick anecdotal stories from the police work in Australia.
Sure. Yeah.
Basically, I work under the crime prevention unit. They hire me, bring me in to do, sometimes it's a government grant, but I come in, I do tours with the police. And so we go into schools. I mean, thousands of kids, and we're giving these sorts of talks in academic settings. So we were finished one day, and my colleague, Sergeant Nigel Dalton is his name, close friend, a great brother. He was on his way home in a police car, and he gets this call. Is there an officer near such and such address? There's a 9-year-old trashing a house. 9 years old. So he took the call and he said, I'm near, I'll handle this. And so they said, we're going to send backup. And Nigel's a very large man. And he goes, look, I'm a dad, I'm a pretty large man, I think I can handle this. He said, no, we're sending you backup. So when he got to the house though, the screen door was shut and you could see through the house. The door was open, but the screen door was shut. He was looking through and sure enough, the house was just a wreck. So he just went in and he was looking for this 9-year-old. And he saw the 9-year-old with a screwdriver tearing at the walls.
Wow.
And when he saw Nigel, he took off running and he hid. So he started walking through room by room, and there was a bathtub that had been the stopper was put in, the water was overflowing, the sink was stopped, water overflowing, everything in every closet was taken out, all the beds were overturned, there was holes in the wall. And he finally found the child's mother and traumatized little sister, and Nigel said to them, what's going on here? And he said, well, every day my son goes over to their friend's house and they play Minecraft after school from 3 to 6, and at 6 o'clock he has to come home. And when he came home today, he was agitated and he wanted to finish what he was doing on Minecraft, but this is a government subsidized house. We don't have Wi-Fi. And he did this. So eventually Nigel found the child, and he tells the story, Nigel does, from working with me, he knew what to do. He said to the child, he found him hiding up in a closet with a blanket cover. He was just gnawing at it, just very agitated. And he had just wrecked the house. I show pictures in my presentations of this. And he said to the young child, he said, I tell you what, if you'll come down out of the closet, I'll watch television with you. And the kid said, deal. Now the point wasn't to watch television, the point was to connect his eyes to a screen so that the dopamine levels would rise and it would act as a stimulant like Ritalin, and it would calm him down.
Yes.
Long enough for the ambulance to get there. He'd threatened suicide, so they had to take him off to be evaluated. So that's one story. A constable came into one of the schools where we were speaking, and he had to go out, and this mother had taken a video game away from her son. The dad was off at the mines working and gone all week, and she was trying to manage these kids by herself, and eventually she cracked because all he wanted to do was play video games, and he needed to do his schoolwork, he needed to do his chores and things like that. So she takes the game away from him. He grabs a big kitchen knife and starts chasing her, locked herself in the bedroom, and the police officer had to go out and arrest the kid, get the knife, and let her out of the bedroom. So I was at this hospital doing a talk for doctors and nurses with the police. We were in there doing this talk to the doctors, and a nurse came to hear me speak that night and said, I just want to let you know of 120 some calls that went out over a particular period of time. They keep track every time the ambulances go out and so forth. He said out of the 120 some times the ambulance went out in that specified time, 50 of them were video game related. So you're seeing this numbing effect that if they don't have stimulation all the time, they have withdrawals. And it can be either they withdraw and they become very isolated, or they have anger and aggression. So you're seeing both dramatically increasing, which would be aggression, and you're also seeing a whole lot of more isolation, running concurrent with each other and growing.
Wow.
And I believe that there's a correlation there. And there's numbers too. We know we have an epidemic of isolation and loneliness.
Yeah, absolutely. You are just in my brain answering these questions left and right. So great job, brother. So towards the end of chapter 2, you wrote about an interview that you had with a therapist. He mentioned the term non-sadness depression.
Yeah.
Are there additional resources or information that you can elaborate on this form of depression? Because
the book that came from, I actually don't know him. I know his daughter, Dr. Archibald Hart. And that he talks about non-sadness depression. It's not an official diagnosis, but it's another term for anhedonia. He was one of the first that I read that identified that in a big way. And the name of that book is called Thrilled to Death.
Thrilled to Death.
Now think about that title. His whole premise is we're thrilling ourselves to numbness, to death. Yeah. And the subtitle was How the Endless Pursuit of Pleasure Leaves Us Numb. So the whole book was about anhedonia. the medical condition known as anhedonia, but he was the first one that I ran into that was talking about the epidemic of parents, that was created by parents using devices as babysitters and what all that's doing to the child's brain, making them numb and bored and things like that. Now, there's been a lot of research since then on that, but that came from Dr. Archibald Hart, and he was the one that coined that term, or he was the first one that I heard use that term, non-sadness depression, and that term was being used to describe a generation of children. And it is sad in and of itself. So you think about that, it's sort of weird. How can you be sad, which is an emotion, but it's non-sadness? And they were just describing a digitally induced form of numbness, emotional numbness.
I'm going to go off the script for a second.
You can go off the script all you want.
I'm just curious. I mean, you'd mentioned, this doctor. I know that there are other, professionals in the field that are doing similar research to you. Is there any discussion about having conferences or summits, across our country? We talked in the last episode that there's currently no rehabilitation centers, for this type of addiction. So, you have the continuum of prevention and education, intervention and treatment. And we're not here yet, but we're certainly a part of prevention and education. I think it would be wonderful, even on a college campus, to have, great people like yourself and others that you had mentioned, and create a summit or a conference where we can invite people in and educate them and get the ball rolling so that it maybe leads to treatment centers. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, you would be the first if you did that. Now, I was just approached recently by a publishing company to write for them. I'm very honored. Don't know that any of this will pan out. These things come along, but had a long meeting with them. And they told me that they sent me this outline of a book. And they said, well, what we had envisioned was to get a number of people like you to contribute a chapter, but we can't find them. So if you do this, you're going to be on your own. And that has come up before. There are all kinds of people who are doing motivational speeches on cyber safety, and they use words like neutral and limit, and it's balance, it's a tool. And then there's the medical side of it that a lot of people know about, but they don't want to speak out because this is such a big topic and everybody has a phone in their pocket and it's not popular. You get a lot of pushback. There are a handful. Dr. Jonathan Haidt has written a book called The Anxious Generation. He's making his rounds now. Dr. Nicholas Kardaras, I mentioned Dr. Victoria Dunkley talking about that she deals a lot with virtual autism and things like that. But that's about it. So my doctorate, I'm working on that now, and I'm working on a detox curriculum. So my point to answer your question is, conferences, we are invited as part of other topics that are related.
Okay.
But dedicated solely, there may be, but I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
So Calvary Chapel I go to their university, I attend their university, but they have children's conferences out in LA, the big ones, and so they gave me 3 sessions at their last conference.
Wow.
A lot of people at that, but it was about children's issues in general, but they made me part of that conference. So I get a lot of that, and I'm thankful for it.
Sure.
But dedicated solely, I agree with you 100%. This is a crisis that we're in, and we definitely need a conference that's dedicated just to that. And I'm not aware of any, Don, but I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, maybe we'll have one at Frostburg State University.
Maybe
We'd love to host something like that.
Well, I would be honored to come.
Yeah. So at the end of chapter 2, you had a lot of suggestions on how we can begin untasking. Can you identify a few of them that will help our audience today?
Well, for that one, I would like to dip into the new book that I have floating around. I say it's about 1.5 years old or 2 years now. It's called Digital Rehab. I was mentioning to you off camera, I get asked that question a lot. So what do we do about it? What are actually practical things that we can do?
Yeah.
I heard Dr. Jonathan Haidt say this the other day, and it's exactly what I tell people. The first thing that you can do is turn off all notifications on your phone permanently. That constantly living online and multitasking or switch tasking rapidly is killing us.
Yes.
The cortisol levels are off the charts. That's a stress hormone that it's generating. Dopamine levels are off the charts. And it's causing shortened attention spans, anxiety, it's causing anger. So turn those off and figure out bucket working where you reply to everyone in the same day, but in buckets and blocks of time with long periods of time where there's no screens in between in a day. And every day have a time when you turn your phone off. I heard a very prominent podcaster last night say 6 p.m. and Tucker Carlson was shocked. Well, I do it at 4.
Yeah.
And that's it. There are exceptions, of course, when I'm traveling and I have flights to catch.
Sure.
You know, I do break that rule. But when I'm home and it's in my everyday schedule, 4 o'clock, I am Beth's from then on. And Beth is my wife, and she should take precedence over a phone. So that's a value that I have.
Yeah.
So those two things alone will move that needle, and go to bed early. And that will move your needle about 80%.
That's significant.
Yes, just by going to bed early and turning off your notifications. And so those are just things you can do. But then the one word that I hate, and I've written almost a whole chapter about this one word, unfortunately. Unfortunately. And until we get rid of the excuses, is the point there. The brain is not going to make an exception because you've come up with a very clever reason why you must have it. So retool your life so that you have it, but it's, when I say limit, it actually has a definition and it actually has goalposts that you don't go past, otherwise you're in foul territory. So I've done that and I'm coping quite well internationally, juggling a lot of stuff. And then at the same time, I'll be honest with you, there are people that are frustrated with me because of long delays in responding.
Yeah.
But you know, there's this old saying, the measure of grace that you give out is what will come back to you. So I just give people a lot of grace and don't expect them to respond to me.
Or practice what you preach.
Yeah, that's right. And so
you're living, you know, what you promote.
Yeah, but I also respond to everyone because that's an ethical issue as well. But it's just not on. But people need to give themselves permission. In the first 2 weeks, you'll drive yourself crazy because you're upsetting people, you're disappointing people, but you're going to have to look after yourself. Look, you are here because of mental well-being, and that's what you're propagating. Yeah. That's why you are here. That's why I do what I do.
Sure.
And the reality is, until we do these drastic things, we're not going to return to homeostasis, which is balance.
So what I hear you saying is that you're designating certain times,
Blocks.
chunking away.
Chunk, yep.
That's what we say in education. We're chunking away, designated times, get it in, and then...
I responded to you, otherwise I wouldn't be up here.
Right.
But there were delays at times, and
Yes.
if you happen to catch me in one of those chunks, I replied right away.
Yeah.
But you are also a kind person, which means I want to hang out with people like you. These are the kind of friends that you want.
Well, I did understand that was what you were doing. You know, I was just worried that, you know, you weren't getting my messages, though.
Well, that was true, actually, because you were calling me today, and I'm like, I didn't get that one.
Yeah. So
but I think that was a
glitch of
conspiracy
sorts.
from telecom people.
Yeah. The other thing that I was thinking of as you were talking too is justifying. You know, in the field of addictions, as an addictions counselor,
Yes.
you know, we have clients that come in justifying why they should or why they should not.
Correct.
You know, so kind of took me back a little.
And because
there.
there's no stigma with digital, it's really easy to justify.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to chapter 4, if you don't mind.
Sure.
All right. So in chapter 4, you quote a therapist from the UK. And he said spending 2 hours on Game Station is equivalent to taking a line of cocaine in the high it produces. Now, that blows me away. Help me understand that. I'm not asking for a neuroscience, lecture, in all due respect, because you're a smart guy, but just like that's like, okay.
Well,
crazy.
Let me back up. He got a lot of pushback on that. He is correct.
Yeah.
The problem is there's no blood test that you can take to confirm that. So there's no data. And I told you in the first segment that we did, the first podcast that we did, that you don't always need data.
Right.
Sometimes common sense. What you can back that up with is neuroscience that talks about video gaming with the way elevated levels of dopamine. So he was using a metaphor there in his observations as a counselor, and he is, in my opinion, it's mine too. All of us who do this know that gaming is not just a pastime anymore; it's a lifestyle. Yeah. It has morphed into an absolute lifestyle, and they live for it. Do you know the average? Well, you've read the book, so you would know. The average age of a video gamer in the United States is 35 to 44. So when people ask me all the time about their children, I ask about them. I'm more concerned about the dads. There are far more dads who are gaming than children.
Yeah.
But what's the scapegoat? It's the child who games. And then it's not going well that I confront this, but if you care about people, you genuinely care about people, you have to cut the snake off at the head, and whoever's buying the devices is that person. But if that person who buys the device is also addicted, you've got a really serious problem. And that's where we are. We have 2 layers of addiction, and that's grown just since in 2012 when I wrote my first book. We could deal with just the children.
Yeah.
Well, then those children now are having children. They're millennials.
Right.
So now they have Gen Z.
Yes.
And now they're having Gen Alpha. So we have 3 layers now sometimes. And grandma is lost to Reddit and Facebook now. I don't have any data for this, but I'll do this in audiences sometimes. I'll say, anybody having trouble finding grandma? And they just bust out laughing. That tells me that I'm on to something.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very difficult. That's why I wrote Digital Rehab as a family detox, because even if we had centers that were blessed by the DSM-5, we don't have enough room to send off an entire family to live in a detox center. We're going to have to take care of this one on our own. I submit that with a good community of faith, a good community that will get together, we can solve this together with the right tools.
Well, that's encouraging.
Yeah.
If you just tuned in, I'm with author Brad Huddleston, and he's written this wonderful text called Digital Cocaine. And this is part 2, and I'm learning a great deal. Even though I read the book, I mean, it's just great to meet you in person.
Yeah,
and
too,
again,
Don.
I'm grateful that you're here.
Thank
but
you.
on page 79, you state clearly we have an international crisis with video gaming. Will you give some examples? And you've talked a little bit about that before, but of the scope of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, when I hear that, like I read the Surgeon General's, you know, report on loneliness, the epidemic of loneliness. It's about 85 pages, this white paper, and I mean, I was just blown away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it did validate and confirm what I was feeling, you know, dealing with young people, and what I was observing. And then reading this book, it's just like I want to do so much more, you know, to not only our young people, you know, but educate our faculty and our staff, get everybody on board with this. I mean, I'm a true believer, and so, but you know, international crisis. Why do you say that?
I was in Thailand not long ago, and we were in the jungle, and I spoke at a church, an indigenous church, in the Hill Tribes group. And they asked me to do a youth meeting after church. Southeast Asia is hot, as you know, so we were under a covered shelter. Well, we were in the building in the morning, but then it was hot, so we were under this covered shelter. And they seated the first graders on the front row, the 12th graders on the back row, and all the grades in between. And I had a translator, of course. Translator, right before we got started, he said to me, Brad, should we take the iPhones and the iPads away from the first graders? They're being distracted. Now, my first thought was, I'm not unused to seeing children with tablets and phones, but the first thing I thought was, we're in the jungle. They don't have adequate anything. Where'd they get them?
Yeah.
Still don't know where they got them. I have some theories. Somebody brought them in, probably an NGO, I don't know. But they had them. And the internet is very fast there. So I go to townships in Africa. I spend a lot of time in Africa, whether it be South Africa. You can see this in Kenya, Namibia. Dirt floors, chickens running around, inadequate everything. But they'll have phones and they're playing video games.
Yeah.
And it is a global scourge. So the things that we've been seeing here in the U.S. have now migrated to the third world and the second world. And it's heartbreaking. I saw a video not long ago of if I'm remembering it correctly, it was in Nigeria, and I think it was the most impoverished township in Nigeria. And there's a kid sitting there with an Xbox. And where he got it, and where they got the electricity, you know, because they don't have anything else. And I see this. I mean, I'm on the ground, and that's why I'm there. Because of digital addiction in the most remote regions on Earth. I've been in Cambodia, and they don't have proper sewage treatment, but they all have phones. I was in Kenya not long ago, and You drive up the road and they got mules pulling wagons and straw hanging off the side, and the guy's sitting up there with a phone. And, it's just, the world in the last 7 years or 8 years, it's just changed so rapidly. And they're gaming. They're playing video games. And they're looking at pornography. They're doing social media. Same thing that we're doing here, TikTok. I can go to a country that I don't speak their language. I can say TikTok, and boy, they light up like Christmas trees.
Yeah.
I speak their language on that level without speaking their language. So it's made the world small, it's made the world the same. The mental health crisis, to answer your question, is everywhere because the dopamine levels are too high. And things that used to be Western phenomena are now Eastern phenomena, and it's the same. We're in a global mental health crisis. And I say that, Australia has labeled theirs an epidemic. But the numbers are the same here, and I see them everywhere else. So I'd just say it's a global pandemic.
How sad. I mean, to think of areas, and we have starvation in our own country, but you think of other countries who really struggle with children and moms and dads who have no food, but yet technology is available.
Yep. And many of these places, they have food, but just enough for that day.
Yeah.
But they have a satellite dish. And they have a phone, and they have a television. And I just think priorities, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And my heart is to go help them, so I go.
Yeah.
And I do the same lecture, might have to have a translator, but the same lecture as I do here.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're doing that.
Well, thank you.
So most likely we have some parents, listening or watching, and some may be wondering, I don't understand my kid, what's going on in their brain. Can you talk to those parents?
First of all, I want to reiterate what we said at the very beginning when we did the first podcast. Do not beat yourself up. You are not a failure as a parent. You're not. The whole world has come under this tsunami of technology. The entire planet has. And for me, I'll just speak for me, and I can honestly say other people who do this, there's not very many of us, we want to help and not put the knife in and turn it or any of that sort of thing. We're here to give you some answers, but the truth is you're dealing with drug addiction. That is just, I don't know how to say that any more plainly, but I'm trying to be nice as I can be. You're dealing with a drug addiction here in children, and we don't really know what to do because we have lots of data in adults who have heroin addiction for years and cocaine. We've never seen this many children on the equivalent of cocaine addiction. Children. Yeah. We do know from brain studies, one done at in Michigan, and some brain scans that I often show. These are MRIs. They did a neuroscientist there did a big study. They seemed to me to be middle school age students who gamed, not all of them, but most of them gamed, so he got a cohort. And he scanned their brains, detoxed them at summer camp for 3 weeks, and then did post scans trying to figure out would their brains heal. And the good news is every single one of them showed drastic improvement when they took the devices away. Not limited. And this is where the rub comes. Yeah. Not a little bit on Saturday. When you eliminated it, just like a cut, and if you wash it and leave it alone, the healing is built in because we're fearfully and wonderfully made. So is the brain. Now, I have to say, the longer that you go with any addiction, and you would know this, you can get into areas of irreparable damage. It's irreparable at that point. So you don't want to wait, but the sooner you catch anything, including this, the signs are very good, parents, that this can be reversed. So you don't beat yourself up because you've been using it as a babysitter and you've bought the devices. What you do is you say, I'm going to turn the page, turn the corner, have some humility that, well, I didn't know what I didn't know, now I know. And that's a good thing, and now I'm going to walk this way. And that's what you do, without a whole bunch of beating yourself up, no shaming of yourself, and fix the problem and get together with other people who want to fix the problem, because the power is in numbers here. If you isolate and try to solve it, addiction, as you know, is way too powerful to walk that one alone. So the more that I advocate in this book, there was this group In the early church, we would call that, who had all things in common. Well, do life together with people that you get along with. That's the point there. Do life together with people and draw on that collective strength and solve this problem. There are tools in these books that'll get you going. So no shame.
I think that's some good information, and I think parents need to hear that. Because shame's a terrible thing.
Yes,
and
it is.
We don't need to be walking around with that.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're going to wind down, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I can't again believe part 2 has gone so quickly, but on a little lighter note, if I may.
Sure.
I was thinking about, there's some gaming devices that really help with eye-hand coordination. And you have some professions that use these systems, to fly planes and do all kinds of things. So where's the balance in it? Because you don't want people becoming addicted, but yet there are some things that are really beneficial.
I looked into that, as you probably know. Flight simulators. Pilots, please use them. Please train in them, because I fly a lot. There are some great therapies. I have a heart for our soldiers. Post-traumatic stress disorder and the things they put their necks out for our freedom. Love them. And they're hurting. There are some therapies with virtual reality that have been developed to desensitize them to explosions and to loud noises, and it works. Here's the difference between the flight simulator and those therapies. They are genuinely limited. In other words, they don't get in the flight simulator as a lifestyle, and every waking moment they're in that flight simulator. They go in there, they train, and they come out. They don't get addicted. It's still not the greatest for you because it's a screen, but it is truly limited. The therapies for the soldiers, very limited. They get them in, they get them out. Similar to this, I often use this humorously. I have all kinds of people come to me and ask for help for their video game addiction, pornography addiction. Not once has somebody come to me and said, Brad, please help me. I'm so addicted to Microsoft Word. They're all digital. They're all addictive. But the reality is, the things that are practical and useful, we get in, we do our business, they're very good, and we get out. We're not there long enough to get addicted. But if it's an entertainment, we tend to stay too long and get hooked.
Yeah.
So there's the balance. The balance, the weight on one side, though, is way heavier than this one. And that's the thing. This is entertainment. The things that are actually useful that we tend to not, while they are addictive, we don't get addicted to them, are very small. And if we do that, that's a hard decision to make. You're going to be fine.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Well, listen, it was great having you back.
Thank you, Don.
I hope maybe we can do another part.
We can.
Because there's some folks out there that need this information. I'm convinced of that. Whether you're an educator or you're a parent or just a regular person, doing your thing, I'm just very impressed, not only with the book, but talking to you one-on-one in person. Very grateful that you've been here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Again, why don't you tell our audience how they can get a copy of this text called Digital Cocaine?
Sure. Here in the U.S., you just go to bradhuddleston.com, bradhuddleston.com, and you'll see all of the ordering information there. If you're in another country, just type in my name, your country, and your bookstores will pop up where you can find it.
Very good.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for being here and enlightening us with this great information. Well, I'm Don Swager. Thanks for joining us with another episode of the PAWSCAST here at Frostburg State University. And remember, healthy choices equal healthy lives. See you next time.
Thank you for being a part of our PAWSCAST. This health and wellness podcast is brought to you by the Prevention Center and Peer Education Network at Frostburg State University. If you would like more information about our programs, visit us in Pullen Hall, room 109, or call us at 301-687-4761. Or you can always send us an email at safeoffice@frostburg.edu. Remember to watch our other episodes and stay tuned throughout the semester. Thank you!